My sister picked up my 6-year-old and tossed her into the deep pool. She knew my daughter couldn't swim. My daughter screamed. I was the only one who jumped in to save her. After that, I didn't cry. I did this. 2 weeks later, their lives started to unravel. It was supposed to be a simple family weekend. Every disaster in my life starts with the words family weekend. My daughter Aria was doing something brave, something tiny, ridiculous, ordinary, unless you were 6 years old and terrified of water. She was standing ankle-deep in the toddler splash pad behind our holiday rental, gripping my hand like the ground might swallow her. The water barely reached her toes, but her whole little body trembled. "You're doing great," I whispered. She nodded, breath shaky, towel waiting behind her like an escape plan. My sister Janelle's kids, Zach and Paige, were at the real pool, the deep one, launching themselves into it like caffeinated stunt doubles. They screamed, splashed, and caused small tsunamis with every cannonball. "Come on, Arya, it's just water," Zach yelled. Paige added, "You're such a chicken." Arya flinched like the droplets were bullets I shot Janelle the universal, "Your children are being demons" look. She shrugged without a hint of shame. "Relax, Leah. They're helping her toughen up." Right. That's how my sister parents chaos as character development. My parents sat in plastic loungers nearby, nodding sagely like they were presiding over a TED Talk on bravery. "You baby her too much," my mother said. My father added, "Kids need a push." Of course I was the problem. That's just the family position on everything. Arya took a tiny step forward. 1 inch. That was all. Then she stepped back out, shaking and proud, and sat beside me wrapped in her towel. Honestly, my heart nearly burst. "Mom?" she whispered. "I did it." "Yes," I said. "You really did." And this is where a narrator with hindsight would warn you the peace was temporary. But I didn't know that yet. What I did know, I wasn't allowed to swim. Minor procedure, stitches, no water. Arya wasn't swimming either. Full body fear, and the rental house had plenty to do besides the stupid pool. So when I stood and told her, "I'm going to use the bathroom. I'll be right back," nothing about it felt dangerous. She nodded, tucked into her towel like a baby chick, and stayed right where I left her. I walked off. Maybe 30 seconds, a minute at most. Then I heard it. A scream. Sharp. Pure panic. A child's scream. My child's scream. My heart dropped so hard it hurt I ran. I don't remember crossing the patio or the yard. I just remember reaching the pool and seeing the thing that should never happen to a terrified 6-year-old. Arya was in the deep end. My daughter, who panics when the bathwater touches her ears, was sinking, thrashing, choking, fighting for the surface. And my entire family, my parents, my sister, her husband, their children, stood around like spectators at a wildlife documentary. Zach and Paige were frozen on the edge. Fascinated, Derek clutched a beer. My parents looked mildly inconvenienced. And Janelle, arms crossed, expression annoyed. Not one of them reached for her. I didn't know how she got in. Slip? Trip? A push? I didn't have time to think. I dove. Clothes, shoes, stitches. The whole lot. The chlorine hit my wound like acid, but pain was a luxury I couldn't afford. I got to her and hauled her above the surface. Her sobs tore into my shoulder, hands gripping the fabric of my shirt as if she could fuse herself into my ribs. "Got you. I've got you," I kept whispering, though my voice shook. When we got out of the pool, she clung to me so tightly I could barely breathe. "How did she—" I asked, my voice already breaking. Arya gasped, trembling so violently I felt it in my bones. "Aunt Janelle, she picked me up. She threw me. I couldn't breathe." She threw her, I turned to Janelle, barely seeing her through the red fog in my head. "You threw my her?" Janelle rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, Leah. This is how kids learn Zach and Paige are amazing swimmers. And you've seen those TikTok videos where instructors toss babies in? It works." "That," I said, choking on rage, "is not the same thing." My mother chimed in, tone dripping judgment. "You're overreacting." And my father, never one to miss an opportunity for disappointment. "You always make things worse with your dramatics." Arya's little voice broke against my shoulder. "I thought I was going to die. Please don't make me go in again." Something inside me shifted hard, cold, final. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't even look at them again. I wrapped Arya tighter, grabbed our bags one-handed, and walked. "Leah!" Janelle yelled. "Oh my God, don't be so dramatic." I kept walking. People who look back still expect empathy. I didn't. Arya cried the first 10 minutes of the drive, then exhaustion swallowed her whole, and she fell asleep in the passenger seat. Damp hair sticking to her cheek, tiny fists still curled. I stared at the road ahead, hands locked on the wheel. I didn't cry. I did something else. 2 weeks later, their lives started to unravel. I wish I could say what Janelle did to Arya came out of nowhere, but if I'm being honest, it was the last chapter of a story that started decades ago. Growing up, I was the cautious one. That's the polite version. My family had other words. Scaredy cat. Too quiet. Overthinker. And my personal favorite, dramatic, said by people who have never recognized an emotion in their lives. My older sister, Janelle, she was the opposite. A tornado in human form. Climbed everything, jumped off anything, ran headfirst into danger like she had a death wish wrapped in confidence my parents loved it. Look how brave she is! Fearless. Just like her mother. Meanwhile, I was the one saying, maybe don't sprint toward the cliff edge, and being told, stop being so negative, Leah. That was the parenting style. If you weren't reckless, you were wrong. My relationship with water was the first casualty. I didn't have a phobia like Arya, but I hated being splashed in the face and I hated waves. You would think a normal family would respect that. Mine enrolled me in swim club. 3 years, twice a week. Practice until she stops acting scared. Fear wasn't something to understand. It was something to punish. By high school, the roles were locked in. Janelle equals fearless star. Me equals fragile disappointment. You'd think adulthood would fix things, maybe with distance and therapy and, I don't know, a functioning prefrontal cortex. Nope. We grew up, but the dynamic didn't. Janelle became the adult version of a roller coaster. Exciting to watch, dangerous to ride, constantly on the brink of shutting down for safety violations. She chased thrills, trips, hobbies, adventures, and debt. My parents weren't far behind her, still throwing money at experiences while ignoring things like bills, budgets, or basic math. And me? I committed the family's greatest crime. I chose stability. I became an accountant, a job my parents described as soul-crushing and for people with no imagination. I bought a sensible car. I didn't go bungee jumping. I didn't buy kayaks. I didn't chase living life to the fullest, otherwise known as poor impulse control. The funny thing about stable people, we become the safety net for unstable ones. I paid emergency bills, covered temporary loans that lasted longer than some marriages, co-signed a loan for Janelle's flashy car because her credit score was basically arterial bleeding, put my name on my parents' mortgage extension because theirs was radioactive, and the whole time they mocked me. Leah, you're so boring. Loosen up. You need adventure in your life. It's amazing how people think you're dull while holding out their hands for help. Then Arya was born, and I recognized something in her immediately. Not fear exactly, but sensitivity. Caution. careful observation. The things my family despised on sight. Her fear of water was intense, instinctive. When she was a toddler and bathwater touched her ears, she shook. Not theatrically, not for attention. Her body just reacted. I knew that feeling. Not as strong as hers, but enough to understand it wasn't a choice. It wasn't defiance. It wasn't weakness. But my family didn't see it that way. History doesn't just repeat in my family, it accelerates. The first time Arya refused to go near the beach, my mother sighed, "Oh, great, another one. Another sensitive child. Another one who wouldn't fit their mold." Janelle said, "Just dunk her. She'll get over it." I told her to stop giving 1950s parenting advice, but she laughed and said I was soft. Her kids, Zach and Paige, were the golden grandchildren. Confident swimmers, fearless jumpers, the kind who shout, "Watch this," before doing something that requires medical insurance. Every time they leapt into water, my parents clapped. Every time Arya hid behind me, they judged. "Look at the difference," Mom whispered once, not quietly. And that stung in a way I don't think she'll ever understand. But the worst part was this. I genuinely believed I could protect Arya by staying close, staying patient, staying calm. I genuinely believed they would never push her too far. I should have walked away from them years earlier, but I didn't. And because I didn't, they took the first chance they got to prove I was wrong. What happened next made the pool incident look gentle. By the time I pulled into our driveway after the pool incident, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the keys. Arya was asleep in the passenger seat, or more accurately, passed out from exhaustion. Little fists still curled like she was bracing for the water to pull her under again. My husband, Simon, opened the front door before I even reached it. One look at my face, then at Arya's wet hair and blotchy cheeks, and he froze. "What happened?" he whispered. I didn't sugarcoat it. I didn't have the strength. "Janelle threw her," I said flatly. "Into the deep end." Simon went still. Not the dramatic kind of still, the dangerous kind. The kind that comes right before something explodes. "She threw her?" I nodded once. That was all it took. Simon's whole body clenched like he was trying not to punch the universe. I got Arya out of the car and carried her inside. Yes, carried, because even unconscious, she clung to me like I was the last dry place on earth. I laid her on her bed. She stirred, whimpered, then immediately relaxed only when she realized I was still there. The kind of reaction a child has when they've been truly terrified. I tucked her in gently. For the first time in my life, silence hurt. Simon sat beside me, voice low. "What now?" I looked at Arya's tiny shaking breaths, the trauma still visible even in sleep. "Now," I said, "we stop pretending they're normal." When I went downstairs, something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just permanently. I walked to my laptop, opened it, and, without fury, without shaking, began ending things. Step 1. The mortgage. Every month I'd been contributing to my parents' payments because family sticks together. Right, cancel. Step 2. The refinancing. They were counting on my income to secure a better rate when their fixed term ended. I removed myself from the application with a single click. Then I called the bank. A polite man answered, and I matched his politeness with icy calm. "I need to withdraw my consent to co-sign my parents' renewal," I said. "It's effective immediately." There was a short pause. "That will affect their eligibility." "Good," I said, and meant it. Next, Janelle's car. Ah, yes. The car. The flashy, impractical, high-payment monstrosity she loved bragging about. the one she couldn't afford without my signature floating under it like a financial life raft I called the loan company. "I'm removing my authorization for payment guarantees," I said. Another pause. Another polite voice. "That will put the account at risk." "Perfect." I wasn't cutting them off, I was handing their lives back to them. The next morning it began. I wasn't even done pouring coffee before my phone started vibrating like it was possessed. Mom calling. Decline. Dad calling. Decline. Janelle calling. Decline. Then all three at once. I sighed and answered before the house woke up. The noise was instant. "What did you do?" "The bank is saying, we can't afford this. Are you insane? You're overreacting." "That was nothing. She just needed—" I didn't speak. I let the chaos burn itself out. Then, when they paused long enough to breathe, I said one sentence. "She could have died because of you." A beat of silence, and then, of course, laughter. Laughter. Mom. "You're so dramatic." Dad. "You always exaggerate." Janelle. "If you hadn't jumped in, she'd probably be swimming by now." Swimming. My 6-year-old child who screams if bathwater hits her ears. I hung up mid-sentence. I didn't want to hear what came next. I already knew the script. I'd lived it my whole life. When I went back upstairs, Arya was awake, curled into a tight ball at the edge of her bed. She flinched when the bathroom faucet dripped. She asked, tiny and trembling, "Is the water going to come out fast?" "No," I said gently. "Can I skip the shower?" "Of course." She hesitated, then whispered, "The water pulled me. I thought it wanted me." I sat beside her and wrapped her in my arms. "They think bravery is jumping off cliffs," I murmured. "They don't understand the courage it took for you to stand in that tiny splash pad yesterday." She leaned into me, and for a moment, everything was still, but not peaceful. Not yet. That night, while Simon made dinner, I watched Arya at the table, trying to color. Her hands shook, but she kept coloring anyway. A tiny act of persistence. A tiny act of bravery no one but me would ever understand. "She's braver than any of them," I said under my breath. Simon looked up, confused. I shook my head. "Nothing." The truth was too big to say out loud. I thought pulling her out of the pool was the end of it, that I'd done the hard part, that the nightmare was over. But trauma doesn't end when the danger ends. And families like mine, they don't apologize, they retaliate. I didn't know it that night, watching Arya press her crayon a little too hard against the paper. I didn't know they were already planning something worse, something loud, something reckless, something that would change everything again. But I'd learn soon, because 2 weeks later, they didn't just ignore a boundary, they crossed one I didn't even know could be crossed. And when they did, all hell broke loose. The school parking lot was half empty when I pulled in that afternoon. I was humming, an actual hum, something light, because for once, after 2 weeks of nightmares and whispered reassurances, Arya had slept through the night I walked into the office expecting the same routine we'd done 100 times. Sign in, smile at the secretary, go home. Instead, the secretary looked up and said the sentence that dropped me straight out of my own body. "Oh, you just missed her. She was picked up early." Everything inside me froze. "Picked up by who?" She glanced at the form on her clipboard like it was nothing, her grandmother and aunt. It was on her emergency contact list. My heart punched my ribs so hard I swear I heard it. My parents. Janelle. The people I had just cut off. The people who had nearly drowned my child. The people I explicitly told to stay away. I couldn't breathe. "They're not allowed to pick her up," I managed. "Not anymore." The secretary blinked, confused but not alarmed. "Well, they were on the list, so—" I didn't let her finish. I was already dialing. I called my mother. No answer. I called my father. No answer. I called Janelle. Straight to voicemail. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. I called again. And again. And again. Nothing. I felt something inside me split open. Not fear, not anger. Something worse. Something cold. Something that whispered, "You know what they're capable of." I dialed 911. "My 6-year-old daughter has been taken without permission," I said. My voice was thin, almost clinical. Her last contact with these people resulted in physical endangerment. I need help. Now. The dispatcher didn't waste time. Officers were on their way. For the first time that day, I breathed. Not deeply, just enough to stay upright. The officers arrived at the school in minutes. I retold everything in quick, clipped sentences. No crying, no dramatics, just facts. They had emergency permission for true emergencies only, I said. They've never used it. Ever. Until today. And they knew they weren't supposed to take her? Yes. And you believe she's in danger? I thought of Arya's screams when she hit the water, her trembling hands, her nightmares. Yes, I said. I absolutely do. They didn't question it. One officer stepped aside to radio dispatch. The other asked for descriptions, phone numbers, vehicle details, everything I could give. Simon arrived 10 minutes later, practically skidding into the lot. "What happened?" he demanded. I didn't even answer. The look on my face told him everything. Then the radio crackled. "Location found." My stomach dropped. A community swimming pool. Of course. Of course. Janelle had taken Arya, my water-phobic, traumatized 6-year-old, to another pool. I didn't think I didn't breathe. I just ran to the car. The officers followed. Simon drove like the road was dissolving under us. I kept seeing Arya's face from 2 weeks ago. Bluish lips, eyes wide, clinging to me with shaking hands. I couldn't lose her again, not even for a second. When we pulled up, my legs nearly gave out. I didn't wait for the officers. I didn't wait for Simon. I sprinted through the lobby, through the changing area, through the echoing mess of tile and chlorine. And then I heard it. Crying. Small high. Panicked. My daughter. I ran so fast I slipped on the wet floor, but I got there, and what I saw made something in me snap clean in half. Arya was backed into a corner of the pool deck, clutching a dry towel to her chest like armor. Tears streaked down her face. Her whole body shook. My parents stood nearby. Janelle was next to them, and beside her was a man I'd never seen, a swim instructor by the look of his goggles and shirt. They weren't throwing her in again. This time, they were trying to coach her, force her, convince her that the problem was her fear, not their cruelty. "We're trying to help her," my mother snapped before I said a word. "She needs to learn to swim," Dad added. "She'll thank us one day," Janelle chimed in, voice bright and poisonous. I didn't yell, didn't scream. I just said, "Arya." She looked up. The second she saw me, she ran, full sprint, into my arms, sobbing so hard she hiccuped. I lifted her, held her tight, and turned to the officer behind me. "That's my daughter," I said. "I did not give permission for this." The officer stepped between me and my family. My mother spluttered, "We're family!" He held up a hand. "Ma'am, you were not authorized to take this child. You'll need to step back." Janelle scoffed. "Are you kidding? We're fixing her fear. Leah is the problem. Always has been." The officer looked at me. "You want to press custodial interference?" "Yes," I said. "Immediately." My parents froze. Janelle's mouth fell open. "You wouldn't do that," she hissed. "You threw my child into a pool," I said. "And today you took her from school without permission, so yes, I absolutely would." The rest moved fast. Statements, warnings, a formal report. A very awkward moment when the instructor realized he'd been pulled into a family meltdown and quietly exited the building. Arya clung to me the whole time. She refused to look at any of them. Not once. When it was finally done and the officers walked us to the car, she whispered, "Can we go home now?" I kissed her forehead. "Yes, baby. We're going home." That night, while Simon sat with Arya and read her a story, I filed the cease and desist, removed every emergency pickup permission, cut the final strings of financial tethering. Mortgage, gone. Car, gone. All access, gone blocked, permanently. I didn't care if they screamed, I didn't care if they spiraled, and I definitely didn't care if their lives fell apart. They crossed the line. And I was done. Arya fell asleep in her own bed, breathing slowly, safely, deeply. I stood in the doorway, the light from the hall catching the soft curve of her cheek, and thought, if this is what protecting her costs, I'd pay it 1,000 times. And then I closed her door. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Blocked numbers, all of them. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Tomorrow would take care of itself. But for the first time in weeks, I knew this. They were finished. And we were finally free. 3 years later, I barely recognize the life we live now, quiet, steady, almost boring in the best possible way. There's a baby in the house now, toddling around with fists full of crackers and a talent for chaos. Arya adores him. She's 9, taller, still cautious, still sensitive, but peaceful. A different child than the one shaking in my arms in that pool. As for my family, they folded fast. Janelle lost her car within months. The repo truck came at dawn, and judging from the screaming voice memo she left me, it was a performance worthy of an Oscar. My parents tried to refinance their mortgage without my name. Spoiler, it didn't happen. Their payments doubled overnight. Within a year, the house was gone, sold off in a panic, then replaced with a cramped rental on the edge of a town where no one knows them and no one cares. Their social circle evaporated too. Turns out word about that pool incident traveled faster than chlorine. I didn't have to lift a finger. They did all the unraveling themselves. Meanwhile, Arya healed slowly. Baths became tolerable again. Then showers. She still wouldn't go near a pool, and I didn't push it. Not once. But courage has a quiet way of showing up when you least expect it. A few months ago, we were at a kiddie pool with the baby. Shallow water, barely ankle deep. He slipped. Just a little stumble, but enough to make him yelp. I froze. For a heartbeat, I was back in that backyard, watching her drown. But Arya? She moved first. She ran straight into the water, scooped her brother up under his arms, and held him until he stopped crying. Her knees were shaking. Her voice was trembling. But she did it. She didn't even look back to see if I was coming. It wasn't deep. It wasn't dangerous. But for her, it was a mountain. She hasn't lost her fear. But now she knows, with absolute certainty, that she can rise above it when someone needs her. Fear didn't make her weak. Love made her brave. So what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.